Steve Harvey was in the middle of asking what should have been a routine Family Feud question when the unexpected happened. A contestant's phone rang right there on stage, breaking every rule of live television. But instead of getting angry, Steve did something that left everyone in tears and changed the way we think about what really matters in life. It was Tuesday, March 12, 2023, at the Family Feud studio in Atlanta. The atmosphere was electric, as always, with two families competing for the grand prize. The Mitchell family from Colorado was facing off against the Thompson family from Florida. Everything was going smoothly until a phone rang at the worst possible moment, leading to one of the most touching scenes in the show's history. Jessica Mitchell, a 26-year-old veterinary technician from Denver, stood at the podium ready to answer. She was confident, having already helped her family score big points in the earlier rounds. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she wore the bright blue team shirt with pride. Behind her, her family cheered her on. Her parents, her younger brother, and her cousin who'd flown in just for the show. Steve adjusted his brown suit jacket and looked at his card with that familiar grin. The perfectly tailored brown suit was one of his favorites, paired with a crisp white shirt and a gold tie that caught the studio lights. He was about to deliver the question when a distinct ringtone echoed through the studio. Not just any ringtone. It was the sound of a dog barking. Everyone froze. In all his years of hosting Family Feud, Steve had dealt with nervous contestants, unexpected answers, and technical difficulties, but never had someone's phone gone off during taping. The production crew looked horrified. This was live television, and phones were supposed to be turned off. Jessica's face went white as she frantically reached for her pocket. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Harvey. I thought I turned it off." "I'm so sorry." Her hands were shaking as she tried to silence the phone. But Steve noticed something else. Tears were already forming in her eyes before she even looked at the screen. "Hold on now," Steve said, raising his hand. "That's a pretty specific ringtone you got there." Jessica nodded, her voice catching. It's set for a specific number. The animal shelter back home. They only call if." She trailed off, staring at the phone screen. Steve Harvey had been in show business long enough to read a room, and something told him this wasn't just an embarrassing mistake. The way Jessica's family behind her had gone quiet, the way her mother had grabbed her father's arm, the way her younger brother had stepped forward like he wanted to run to his sister. This was something bigger. "You need to take that call?" Steve asked gently. Jessica looked up at him, tears now flowing freely. "My dog. My childhood dog Buddy has been missing for 3 weeks. This is the emergency line they gave me to call if anyone finds him." The studio audience let out a collective gasp. Steve felt his own heart squeeze. He was a dog person himself. Had been his whole life. He knew that particular pain of a missing pet, the way it left a hole in your daily routine, in your heart. "Take the call," Steve said firmly. "Right here, right now. Take the call." The production team was gesturing frantically from behind the cameras, but Steve waved them off. This was his show, and some things were more important than television schedules. Jessica answered with shaking hands, putting the phone to her ear. "Hello? Yes. This is Jessica Mitchell." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the studio was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. "You did? Are you sure?" The white marking on his chest, shaped like a heart. Steve moved closer to Jessica, his brown suit catching the stage lights as he positioned himself supportively near her. He could see her knees, starting to buckle. "He's okay? He's really okay?" Jessica was crying openly now. "Where?" Yes, I understand. Thank you. Thank you so much." When she hung up, Jessica turned to Steve and then to her family. "Someone found him. He's at a vet clinic in Colorado Springs. He's thin, but he's alive. They found him this morning." The Mitchell family erupted. Jessica's mother was crying. Her father was pumping his fist, and her brother was shouting, "Yes, yes." But Steve noticed Jessica seemed almost frozen, like she couldn't quite process the news. "Tell us about Buddy," Steve said, guiding Jessica to sit on the steps of the Family Feud stage. His brown suit pants pulled slightly as he crouched beside her, not caring one bit about wrinkles or appearances. "How long have you had him?" Jessica wiped her eyes, a small smile breaking through. 14 years. My parents got him for me when I was 12. I was going through a really hard time. We just moved from Texas. I had no friends. And I was the weird new kid who loved animals more than people. Her family had gathered around now, and her mother added, "Buddy saved our daughter." She was struggling with anxiety and depression, and that dog became her best friend, her confidant, her reason to get up every morning. "He's a border collie," Jessica continued. "Black and white with this perfect heart-shaped marking on his chest. The smartest dog you've ever met. He knows over 50 commands, can open doors, and even learned to bring me tissues when I cry." Steve felt himself getting emotional. "And he's been missing for 3 weeks?" Jessica nodded. "There was a terrible thunderstorm. Buddy's always been terrified of thunder. We think he panicked and somehow got out of the yard. We've searched everywhere, put up hundreds of flyers, posted on every social media site, called every shelter in a 100-mile radius. After the first week, people started telling us to give up hope. They said no dog could survive the cold nights we've been having in Colorado." "But you didn't give up," Steve observed. "I couldn't," Jessica said simply. "Buddy never gave up on me. When I was at my lowest, when I thought I had no reason to keep going, he would put his head on my lap and refuse to move until I smiled. How could I give up on him?" Steve stood up, his mind racing. He looked at his production team, then at the other family who was competing. The Thompsons were watching with tears in their own eyes, completely absorbed in the story. "You know what?" Steve announced. "We're going to do something different today. Jessica, when do you need to get back to Colorado to get Buddy?" "The vet said he'll need to stay overnight for observation, but I can pick him up tomorrow morning," Jessica said, standing up shakily. Steve turned to the audience. "How many of y'all have ever lost a pet?" Hands went up all over the studio. Nearly everyone had experienced that particular heartbreak. "And how many of you know what it feels like to get them back?" Fewer hands this time, but those who raised them were nodding vigorously, some wiping away tears. Steve made a decision that the producers would later call one of his finest moments. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to finish this game, but win or lose, the Mitchell family is getting the grand prize money to help with Buddy's vet bills and to get Jessica home to her dog." The audience erupted in applause. The Thompson family was clapping too, with Mrs. Thompson calling out, "We have dogs too. We understand." But Steve wasn't done. He pulled out his phone, right there on stage. "What's the name of the vet clinic?" he asked Jessica. "Mountain View Animal Hospital in Colorado Springs," she replied, confused. Steve dialed information and got connected while everyone watched. "Yes, hello. This is Steve Harvey. Yes, the real Steve Harvey. I'm calling about a border collie named Buddy that was brought in this morning." "Yes, I'll hold." The audience chuckled at the, "Yes, the real Steve Harvey" part, but Steve was focused. When he got back on the line, his face was serious. "I understand. Yes. I'd like to cover all of his medical expenses. No, all of them. Whatever he needs. Yes. You can verify. This is really me. I'm actually on stage at Family Feud right now." Steve put the call on speaker so everyone could hear. The veterinarian on the other end was explaining Buddy's condition. Dehydrated, about 10 pounds underweight. Some cuts on his paws that suggested he'd traveled a long distance, but overall remarkably good shape for a 14-year-old dog who'd been on his own for 3 weeks. "He's a fighter," the vet said. "And he was definitely trying to get somewhere." A woman found him this morning in her backyard, about 40 miles from the address on his tag. It looked like he was heading in the direction of home. That broke Jessica completely. She sobbed into her hands while her mother held her. The image of her elderly dog trying to find his way home for 3 weeks was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Steve ended the call with the vet and turned back to the families. "You know what? Let's play this game. But I want everyone to know that we're not just playing for points or prizes today. We're playing to celebrate Buddy making it home. The game resumed, but the energy was completely different. Every answer was met with encouragement from both families. When Jessica had to return to the podium for her turn, Steve made sure to check on her first. "You good to play?" he asked. Jessica nodded, wiping her eyes. "Buddy would want me to finish what I started." Steve smiled and read the question. "We surveyed 100 people. Name something a dog does that lets you know it loves you." Jessica laughed through her tears. "Brings you tissues when you cry." It wasn't on the board, but Steve didn't care. "I'm giving you points for that answer, because that's love right there. That's pure love." The game continued with both families playing their hearts out. Every question seemed to somehow relate back to the love between humans and their pets. During one particularly funny moment, when asked about something dogs do that annoy their owners, Jessica's brother answered, "Run away during thunderstorms," which made everyone laugh and cry at the same time. As the game neared its end, Steve noticed Jessica kept checking her phone. "Any updates?" he asked during a break. "The woman who found him sent me a video," Jessica said, her hands shaking as she held up her phone. "She took it this morning before bringing him to the vet." "Can we see it?" Steve asked. "Can we put it up on the big screen?" The tech crew worked their magic, and within moments, the video was playing on the studio's main screen. There was Buddy, thin, dirty, and clearly exhausted, but his tail was wagging as the woman offered him water and food. The heart-shaped marking on his chest was unmistakable. "That's my boy," Jessica whispered. "That's my Buddy." The video showed Buddy wolfing down food but then stopping to look around, like he was still searching for something, or someone. The woman's voice could be heard saying, "It's okay, boy. We're going to find your family." Steve had to turn away for a moment to compose himself. When he turned back, he noticed something. "Jessica, why did that woman have your emergency number?" "I put it on special flyers," Jessica explained. "Not just the regular ones. I made special ones with Buddy's favorite treats taped to them, hoping his scent would attract him. I put my cell number and wrote, 'Emergency. Call anytime,' because I didn't want anyone to hesitate about calling late at night or early morning." "How many of those special flyers did you make?" Steve asked. "About 500, Jessica admitted. My whole family helped. We stayed up all night making them, driving around, putting them up everywhere we could think of." Her brother added, "She mapped out every place Buddy had ever been on walks, every park he liked, every route we'd ever taken in the car. She was like a detective trying to think like Buddy would think." Steve shook his head in admiration. "That's dedication. That's love." The game wrapped up with the Mitchell family winning, but it was clear that everyone in the studio felt like winners. As the families said their goodbyes, Mrs. Thompson from the competing family approached Jessica. "I'm so happy for you," she said, hugging Jessica tightly. "I have a 14-year-old lab myself. I can't imagine going through what you did." Steve announced that both families would be receiving prize packages, but he wasn't done with surprises. "Jessica, I've arranged for a private jet to take you and one family member back to Colorado tonight. You don't have to wait until tomorrow morning. You can be there when Buddy wakes up." Jessica's knees buckled again, but this time from pure gratitude. "Mr. Harvey, I don't know what to say. This is too much." "It's not too much," Steve said firmly, his brown suit jacket moving as he gestured emphatically. "You know what's too much? A dog trying to walk 40 miles home. That kind of love deserves to be rewarded." But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Steve's production assistant whispered something in his ear, and his face lit up. "Hold on. Hold that thought. We've got someone on video call who wants to talk to you." The big screen lit up again, and there was the veterinarian from Mountain View Animal Hospital. But she wasn't alone. Lying on a blanket beside her, looking much more alert than in the earlier video, was Buddy. "Oh my God!" Jessica screamed. "Buddy! Buddy baby, can you hear me?" At the sound of Jessica's voice coming through the clinic speakers, Buddy's head shot up. His tail started wagging, and he struggled to stand up, looking around for the source of the familiar voice. "He definitely knows your voice," the vet confirmed, turning the camera so Buddy could see the screen. "Look, Buddy, Look who it is." What happened next had everyone in the studio reaching for tissues. Buddy saw Jessica on the screen and started crying. An actual distinctive whine howl that border collies are known for. He pressed his nose against the screen, his tail wagging so hard his whole back end was moving. "I'm coming, baby," Jessica sobbed. "I'm coming to get you. You're such a good boy. Such a brave boy." Buddy responded with more crying and started doing a little dance, despite his obvious exhaustion. It was clear that he recognized his human, his best friend, the girl he'd helped through her darkest days.
Steve let the reunion continue for several minutes, not caring about time constraints or commercial breaks. This was what television should be. Real moments of pure emotion and joy.
When the video call ended with promises from the vet to take extra special care of Buddy until Jessica arrived, Steve gathered both families for a final moment. "What we saw here today," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "is a reminder that love doesn't recognize species." That dog spent 3 weeks trying to get home. 3 weeks of cold nights, no food, probably scared out of his mind, but he kept going. Why? Because somewhere out there was his person, his Jessica, and that was worth fighting for. He turned to Jessica specifically. "And you never gave up either. 500 flyers with treats on them, mapping out every possible route, keeping your phone on that special ringtone. That's not just looking for a pet. That's refusing to abandon family." Jessica nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Steve addressed the audience one more time. "I want every one of you to remember this when you get home. Hug your pets a little tighter. Make sure your contact information is up to date on their tags. And if you see a lost animal, don't assume someone else will help. Be the person who makes the call. Be the person who brings someone's buddy home." As the show wrapped up and the cameras stopped rolling, the studio was filled with a different energy than usual. People were sharing their own stories of lost and found pets, exchanging tips about pet safety, and many were calling home to check on their own animals. Jessica's father pulled Steve aside. "Mr. Harvey, I don't know how to thank you. Jessica hasn't been the same these past 3 weeks. She blamed herself for the gate being loose, for not checking it before the storm. She's barely slept, barely eaten. Getting Buddy back. It's like getting our daughter back, too." Steve nodded, understanding completely. That's the thing about dogs, man. They're not just pets. They're therapists, best friends, and family all rolled into one. Buddy's probably been helping Jessica more than any of us realize. A few hours later, Steve stood on the tarmac in his brown suit, which now showed the wear of an emotional day, watching Jessica and her mother board the private jet. Jessica turned back and waved, her face still streaked with tears but glowing with anticipation. "Thank you for everything," she called out over the engine noise. "You thank Buddy for me," Steve called back. "Tell him he's a good boy from Uncle Steve." As the jet took off into the evening sky, Steve's assistant showed him social media on her tablet. The story was already going viral. Number Buddy Comes Home was trending, and thousands of people were sharing their own stories of lost pets who made it home against all odds. But the best update came late that night. Jessica sent a video from the animal hospital. She was on the floor of a treatment room, and Buddy was in her lap, his tail still wagging but more slowly now, content and exhausted. He kept putting his paw on her arm, like he was making sure she was real. "He won't let me go," Jessica said in the video, laughing through fresh tears. "The vet says it's like he's afraid I'll disappear if he stops touching me." The video showed Buddy's face up close. Despite his ordeal, his eyes were bright and alert, fixed on Jessica with an expression of pure adoration. The heart-shaped marking on his chest was matted and dirty, but still visible, a perfect symbol of the love that had brought them back together. Steve watched the video in his hotel room, still wearing his brown suit pants and white shirt, too emotionally drained to change. His own dogs were at home in Chicago, and he made a mental note to give them extra treats when he got back. The next morning, Jessica sent another update. Buddy had slept through the night, curled up against her in the clinic's special family room. The vet had run more tests and confirmed that despite his adventure, Buddy was in remarkably good shape for a senior dog. He had some worn paw pads that would need care. He needed to gain weight back gradually, and he'd need some dental work. But overall, he was going to be fine. She thinks he probably found shelter during the worst nights, Jessica reported. Maybe barns or under porches. And from the way his stomach contents looked, he'd been finding food. Probably from kind people who saw a hungry dog and helped without knowing he was lost. Steve shared these updates with his social media followers, and the response was overwhelming. People from all over the country started sharing photos of their own reunions with lost pets. Animal shelters reported an increase in people updating their pets' microchip information. Pet stores sold out of GPS tracking collars. A week later, Steve received a package at his studio. Inside was a photo of Buddy, cleaned up and looking healthier, wearing a new collar with a GPS tracker. He was mid-leap, catching a frisbee, his heart-shaped chest marking bright white against his black fur. Jessica had written on the back, "Day 7 back home. He's still not letting me out of his sight, and I'm okay with that. Thank you for stopping everything for us. Jessica and Buddy." There was also a paw print in ink and a note. "Buddy's official. Thank you." Steve had that photo framed and placed in his dressing room, right next to pictures of his own dogs. It served as a daily reminder that sometimes the most important moments in television happen when you throw out the script and just let life unfold. The episode of Family Feud aired a month later to the highest ratings of the season. But more importantly, it sparked a national conversation about pet safety and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. The phone company that made Jessica's phone even created a special pet alert ringtone inspired by the barking sound that had interrupted the show. Jessica and Buddy became advocates for lost pet awareness. They visited schools and community centers, teaching children about pet safety and the importance of proper identification. Buddy, despite his age, seemed to have a new lease on life. He wore his GPS collar proudly and continued to bring Jessica tissues whenever she cried, though these days they were more often happy tears. The Mitchell family returned to Family Feud for a special Champions Week episode 6 months later. This time, Buddy was in the audience, wearing a special Family Feud bandana. When Steve walked out in another perfectly tailored brown suit, Buddy recognized him immediately and barked, the same bark that had started everything. "That's my ringtone," Jessica laughed, and the audience gave Buddy a standing ovation. During the commercial break, Steve made his way over to meet Buddy in person. The elderly border collie, now back to a healthy weight with a glossy coat, wagged his entire body with excitement. He performed one of his tricks, offering Steve his paw for a shake. "Now that's a good boy," Steve said, crouching down in his expensive suit to be at Buddy's level. "You're the real champion here, aren't you?" Buddy responded by giving Steve's face a quick lick, which made the entire audience laugh. Steve didn't even wipe it off. Some things were more important than makeup. The story of Buddy's return home became part of Family Feud legend. It was the day Steve Harvey proved that sometimes the best television happens when you forget about television entirely and just focus on what matters, family, in all its forms. Years later, when asked about his most memorable moments hosting Family Feud, Steve would always mention the day a phone rang on stage. "That wasn't just about a lost dog," he'd say. "That was about never giving up on love. That was about the family you choose and the family that chooses you. That was about a dog who walked through hell to get back to his girl, and a girl who never stopped believing he'd come home." He'd pause then, getting that look he got when something really mattered. And you know what? He did come home. Against all odds, through storms and cold nights and 40 miles of unknown territory, that dog came home. If that doesn't make you believe in something bigger than ourselves, I don't know what will. The brown suit Steve wore that day was eventually retired and donated to a charity auction, raising thousands of dollars for local animal shelters. But the memory of that day, of Jessica's shaking hands as she answered the phone, of Buddy's face on the video screen, of an entire studio coming together to celebrate love and loyalty. Into 6. That memory lived on. It reminded everyone who saw it that sometimes the most important calls come at the worst possible times. That love doesn't follow television schedules. And that whether you walk on 2 legs or 4, family will always find a way home. Steve Harvey asked for a simple Family Feud answer that day, but what he got instead was proof that the best stories aren't scripted. They're lived by ordinary people and their extraordinary dogs, who remind us every day that love is worth fighting for, worth waiting for, and worth celebrating whenever and wherever we find it, even if it means stopping everything when a phone rings on stage.